In the springtime, the grass growth is not there yet. So we don't even have that available in a lot of our lakes. It starts growing in the early spring. So we're gonna be looking at rocks. And the upper 40s through the 50s, that's when you're gonna start seeing the grass patterns and the crankbaits start to excel in the grass patterns. When the water temperature gets up into the 50s, you're gonna start seeing that early grass growth. Man, there's nothing better than catching bass on a crankbait out of that early grass growth. That's one of the first places they move to when the water temperature gets up that high. You can hit me another, I'll point to you. The Shad Rap, all right? All-time greatest cold water crankbait, tight wobble, slender. I use it in all types of cover, just the grass and the rock. One of the keys is bait. I love to fish this tool around a lot of bait. Now in the cold water, in the wintertime deals, we're gonna be fishing around bait. If you're not seeing a lot of bait in the areas where you're fishing, you need to move to an area where you can find some. In the cold water, fish don't feed all that often. Their metabolism's slower. So they're gonna position themselves around schools of bait, places where they don't have to swim across the lake or across the river to get a meal. They wanna be able to act on it in short term. So they're gonna be around bait. So I'm gonna be looking for that. Now when I fish this bait, a lot of the baits that I fish is all about deflection, right? We talk about and hear about deflection strikes. You wanna hit that rock and bounce it off, rip it out of the grass, and that type of stuff. Well, the Shad Rap has a subtle presence about it, and it pulls fish up off the cover. It is not as much about deflection as it is about its signature in the water. That tight wobble, that minnow presence in the water is what pulls fish up and off the cover. So if I'm fishing this on a bluff, on a rock transition place, I'm gonna try to hit those rocks, but I'm gonna continue to fish that bait out off the cover. It's gonna pull fish up off of those breaks and they'll come up and tear into it. The same thing with early grass growth. I'll be fishing the outside grass edges and I'll definitely try to hit the grass, but a lot of the bites come on a Shad Rap on just a steady retrieve out over top the water, over top of that break line, almost like you're fishing for suspended fish. And I think a lot of times the fish that I catch on the Shad Rap are suspended fish. They're fish that are suspended around the bait that I'm fishing for in the area. I love the number 8 size. I fish that a lot, especially in bodies of water that have larger bait fish. A lot of the places, another one that I use is the number 5. It's really, really small. And I fish that around the lakes around my house. It seems in the wintertime, that little tiny bait, and I can add a number 4 treble hook to the front of it, and it causes that bait to almost suspend and become very, very slow rising. And that is an amazing tool in the cold water situations. You don't want your bait to be floating 100 miles up out of the strike zone. You want it to be, you want to be able to pause that bait, give those fish an opportunity to get it. When I'm fishing around a lot of bait that I can see on my sonar, I'm going to use a shad pattern. I keep my colors real simple with this. The other pattern that I really like is the crawdad. This orange crawl is an outstanding springtime bait. I think around the rocks especially, when the crawfish start becoming available to bass, this little bait does a heck of a job catching those fish out of the rocks, and they really react well in the cold water to the crawl pattern. But fish this bait. What I do is I cycle through these baits. I'm going to talk about 4 separate crankbaits that I use, and I cycle through them to figure out which baits are going to perform best in any kind of cold water situation.
And the information Bass University provides isn't your basic run-of-the-mill fishing video. This is specific information from A to Z to help you learn, get to the water, and become a better angler quickly.